In the vast expanse of the American frontier, where legends are born under starlit skies, one cowboy's act of kindness would forever alter the course of human history. What started as an ordinary night on the range became an extraordinary encounter that challenged everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. This is the story of Jake Morrison, a simple ranch hand whose compassion for a stranded traveler would unlock secrets beyond his wildest imagination. The year was 1887, and the Arizona Territory stretched endlessly under a canopy of brilliant stars that seemed close enough to touch. Jake Morrison rode his faithful horse, Thunder, across the moonlit plains, returning from a cattle drive that had lasted 3 grueling weeks. The 28-year-old cowboy had weathered face lined with determination, and eyes that held the wisdom of someone who lived hard but fair. His worn leather chaps and dusty hat told the story of countless days under the scorching sun and cold desert nights. As Thunder's hooves beat a steady rhythm against the packed earth, Jake noticed something peculiar on the horizon. A strange, pulsating light emanated from behind a cluster of red rocks near Devil's Canyon, casting an eerie blue glow that didn't belong in this familiar landscape. At first, he thought it might be other cowboys making camp, but the light was unlike any campfire he'd ever seen. It flickered and danced in patterns that seemed almost alive, sending shivers down his spine despite the warm night air. Curiosity overcoming caution, Jake guided Thunder toward the mysterious illumination. The closer they got, the more apparent it became that this was no ordinary sight. The light pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm, and a low humming sound filled the air, vibrating through his chest like distant thunder. Thunder whinnied nervously, his ears pinned back and eyes wide with an instinctual fear that Jake had never seen in his usually calm companion. As they crested the final hill, Jake's breath caught in his throat. Before him lay a craft unlike anything he could have imagined, sleek, silver, and roughly the size of a small barn, but shaped like no building he'd ever seen. It curved and flowed like liquid metal frozen in time, with no visible seams or joints. Strange symbols glowed along its surface, pulsing in harmony with the blue light that bathed the entire area. The craft appeared to be partially buried in the desert sand, tilted at an odd angle as if it had crashed or made an emergency landing. Near the strange vessel, a figure moved with obvious distress. At first glance, Jake thought it might be a person in unusual clothing, but as his eyes adjusted to the ethereal light, he realized he was looking at something far more extraordinary. The being stood about 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs and a graceful, almost fluid way of moving. Its skin had a pale, luminescent quality that seemed to absorb and reflect the blue light emanating from the craft. The creature, for Jake could think of no better word, appeared to be injured. It moved with a pronounced limp, favoring its left side, and dark fluid that might have been blood stained the ground where it walked. Despite his shock and the rational voice in his head screaming at him to ride away as fast as Thunder could carry him, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of compassion. This being, whatever it was, needed help, and Jake Morrison had never been one to turn his back on a soul in need. Dismounting slowly, his hands held high to show he meant no harm, Jake approached the alien visitor. The being turned toward him with large, luminous eyes that held intelligence, pain, and something that might have been hope. In that moment, 2 entirely different worlds collided, setting in motion events that would change not just Jake's life, but the destiny of humanity itself. The alien being regarded Jake with what seemed to be a mixture of wariness and desperate relief. Despite the vast differences between them, Jake recognized the universal language of suffering in the creature's posture and movements. The being's injury was clearly serious. The dark fluid that Jake now realized was indeed blood continued to seep from a wound on its side, and its breathing appeared labored and irregular. Without hesitation, Jake approached slowly, speaking in the gentle tone he used to calm spooked cattle. "Easy there, friend. I can see you're hurt. I don't know what you are or where you come from, but I know when someone needs help." The alien tilted its head at the sound of his voice, and though it couldn't possibly understand his words, it seemed to sense his peaceful intentions. The being gestured toward its damaged vessel with long, graceful fingers that ended in what looked like small, luminescent nodes. As Jake moved closer to the craft, he could see that a large section of its hull had been torn open, revealing a complex interior filled with crystalline structures and flowing energy patterns that defied his understanding. Sparks of blue and silver light danced across damaged surfaces, and several of the glowing symbols along the exterior flickered weakly like dying candles. Through a series of gestures and what Jake could only describe as telepathic impressions, the alien began to communicate. Images flashed in Jake's mind, not words, but concepts and emotions that painted a picture of the being's plight. It had traveled vast distances across the stars, part of a peaceful exploration mission, when its ship had been caught in some kind of cosmic storm. The damage had forced an emergency landing on this remote planet, and without repairs, the being would be stranded forever, slowly dying from its injuries and the incompatibility of Earth's atmosphere. Jake found himself understanding far more than should have been possible. The alien's name was something unpronounceable that translated roughly to Seeker of Light, and it came from a world where beings lived in harmony with energy itself. The visitor was peaceful, curious about other forms of life, and now completely dependent on the kindness of this strange bipedal creature it had encountered. Working together through the night, Jake helped Seeker of Light gather materials needed for the repairs. The alien showed him how to identify specific minerals and metals from the surrounding desert, substances that would serve as components for the ship's healing systems. Jake's practical knowledge of machinery and metalwork, gained from years of maintaining ranch equipment, proved surprisingly useful in understanding the alien technology. As they worked side by side, a bond began to form between the two vastly different beings. Jake shared water from his canteen, and though the alien couldn't drink it, the gesture wasn't lost on the cosmic visitor. In return, Seeker of Light used some kind of energy field to ease the pain in Jake's back, a chronic ache from years of hard labor that disappeared for the first time in months. The most challenging part of the repair involved recalibrating the ship's energy core, a process that required precise timing and coordination. Jake found himself holding components in place while Seeker of Light channeled energy through its hands, creating a light show that painted the desert in impossible colors. Several times, they nearly lost the delicate balance needed to restore power, but Jake's steady hands and the alien's knowledge eventually succeeded. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold, the ship's lights began to pulse more strongly. The hull slowly began to reform itself, sealing the breach through some process that looked like magic to Jake's eyes. Seeker of Light's wounds were also healing, aided by the restored ship's medical systems, and its movements became more fluid and confident. With the repairs complete, both beings stood before the now pristine vessel, each changed by their encounter. Jake had witnessed wonders beyond imagination, while Seeker of Light had experienced human compassion and ingenuity firsthand. As the alien prepared to depart, it reached into a compartment within the ship and withdrew a small, crystalline device that pulsed with soft inner light. Seeker of Light pressed the mysterious crystal device into Jake's weathered hands, and the moment their skin made contact, an explosion of images and sensations flooded the cowboy's mind. He saw vast cities floating among the stars, beings of light traveling between worlds, and technologies that could heal the sick, end hunger, and bring peace to troubled souls. But most startling of all, Jake saw himself, not as he was now, but as he could become. The vision showed Jake standing before world leaders, sharing knowledge that would advance human civilization by centuries. He saw himself as a bridge between two worlds, carrying messages of peace and wisdom from the stars to his fellow humans. The crystal wasn't just a gift, It was a key that would unlock abilities Jake never knew he possessed, and a responsibility that would reshape his entire existence. As the overwhelming cascade of images subsided, Seeker of Light's voice echoed directly in Jake's mind. Your kindness has saved not just my life, but potentially the future of both our species. This device will awaken dormant aspects of your consciousness and connect you to our network of peaceful beings throughout the galaxy. But with this gift comes a choice. Jake Morrison. You can return to your simple life, treasuring this memory as a beautiful dream. Or you can accept the role of humanity's first ambassador to the cosmos. The weight of the decision pressed down on Jake like a physical force. Everything he had ever known, his life on the ranch, his simple existence under the wide Montana sky, his dreams of saving enough money to buy his own spread suddenly seemed impossibly small compared to the vast destiny being offered to him. Yet those same humble dreams and values had shaped the man he was, the man capable of showing kindness to a wounded stranger, regardless of how alien that stranger might be. Seeker of Light's ship began to emit a low, harmonious tone, signaling that departure was imminent. The alien being placed what Jake assumed was its hand on the cowboy's shoulder, and in that touch, Jake felt centuries of wisdom and compassion flowing from an ancient civilization that had learned to live in harmony with the universe itself. The choice need not be made tonight, Seeker of Light communicated. Keep the device with you. When you are ready, when humanity is ready, it will guide you to us. Until then, know that you have friends among the stars, and your act of kindness tonight has created ripples that will spread across the galaxy. With that, the cosmic visitor boarded its vessel. The ship rose silently from the desert floor, its hull shimmering like liquid starlight. It hovered for a moment above Jake, bathing him in warm blue radiance, then shot upward with impossible speed, becoming first a bright star, then nothing more than a memory against the lightning dawn sky. Jake stood alone in the desert, the crystal device warm in his palm, trying to process what had just occurred. Thunder whinnied softly nearby, apparently untroubled by the miraculous events he had witnessed. As Jake mounted his horse and turned toward home, he noticed something extraordinary. His vision was sharper, his hearing more acute, and he felt a strange awareness of living things around him that he'd never experienced before. The crystal had already begun its work, subtly enhancing his natural abilities and creating new pathways in his consciousness. Jake could sense the heartbeat of every small creature in the desert, feel the slow pulse of life in the cacti and scrub brush, and perceive patterns of energy flowing through the landscape like invisible rivers of light. But it was what happened when Jake finally reached the Morrison Ranch that truly demonstrated how profoundly his encounter with Seeker of Light had changed everything. His younger sister Mary had been bedridden for weeks with a fever that the local doctor couldn't break. The moment Jake entered her room, the crystal device in his pocket began to pulse gently, and he instinctively knew what to do. Placing his hands on Mary's burning forehead, Jake felt healing energy flow through him like warm sunlight. The fever broke within minutes, and Mary's eyes fluttered open, clearer and more alert than they had been in weeks. She looked at her brother with wonder, seeing something in his face that hadn't been there before at depth, a wisdom and a light that seemed to shine from within. Word of Mary's miraculous recovery spread quickly through the small frontier community, and within days, people were coming from miles around, bringing their sick and injured to Jake Morrison, the cowboy who had somehow gained the power to heal. Jake found himself at the center of attention he never wanted, possessing abilities he was still learning to understand and control. The days following Murray's healing were filled with both wonder and torment for Jake Morrison. His modest ranch became a pilgrimage destination as word spread about the cowboy who could cure ailments that had baffled doctors for generations. Families traveled for days across the harsh territory, carrying sick children, elderly parents, and anyone else who might benefit from Jake's mysterious gift. At first, Jake embraced his newfound abilities with the same generous spirit that had led him to help. Seeker of light. He laid hands on the lame and watched them walk, touched the eyes of the blind and witnessed their sight return, and held dying infants who miraculously began to thrive. Each healing filled him with a profound sense of purpose and connection to something far greater than himself. But it also drained him physically and emotionally in ways he was only beginning to understand. The crystal device seemed to pulse with increasing intensity as Jake used his abilities, and with each healing he experienced brief flashes of cosmic awareness, glimpses of distant worlds, alien civilizations, and the vast network of consciousness that connected all living beings throughout the universe. These visions were beautiful but overwhelming, leaving him feeling unmoored from his simple human existence. More troubling were the changes Jake noticed in himself beyond the healing powers. His need for sleep had decreased dramatically, and he often found himself standing outside at night, staring at the stars with a longing he couldn't quite name. Food began to taste different, almost flavorless, while natural elements like sunlight and flowing water seemed to nourish him in ways that traditional sustenance could not. The local preacher, Reverend Samuel Thompson, arrived at the ranch on a dusty Tuesday morning, his face grave with concern and suspicion. Thompson was a fire and brimstone minister who saw the devil at work in anything that could not be explained by strict biblical doctrine. He demanded to know the source of Jake's powers, insisting that no man could perform such miracles without either divine blessing or satanic influence. "These healings ain't natural, Jake," Thompson declared, his voice carrying the authority he used from the pulpit. "The good Lord works through prayer and faith, not through some cowpoke laying hands on folks. I've seen the way your eyes glow when you do it, the strange light that surrounds you. That ain't the light of heaven, boy. That's something altogether different." Jake tried to explain his encounter with Seeker of Light, but his words only confirmed Thompson's worst fears. The preacher saw Jake's story of alien visitors as either blasphemous lies or evidence of demonic possession. Within hours of leaving the ranch, Thompson was spreading word throughout the territory that Jake Morrison had made a pact with dark forces, and that anyone seeking his healing was risking their immortal soul. The controversy split the community down the middle. Those who had been healed or whose loved ones had been saved by Jake's touch remained loyal supporters, but others began to view him with fear and suspicion. The local sheriff, a practical man named Bill Hawkins, who had known Jake since childhood, found himself in an impossible position as tensions escalated. Adding to Jake's troubles was the arrival of Dr. Edgar Whitmore, a physician and researcher from back east, who had heard impossible stories about a cowboy performing medical miracles on the frontier. Whitmore was a man of science who didn't believe in supernatural healing, but he was intensely curious about the reported phenomena and determined to expose what he assumed was an elaborate fraud. Dr. Whitmore set up residence in the nearby town and began interviewing people who claimed to have been healed by Jake. To his amazement, he found genuine medical improvements that defied conventional explanation. Children born deaf could suddenly hear perfectly. Men with missing limbs showed signs of regenerative tissue growth, and women suffering from consumption showed no trace of the disease in their lungs. The doctor's scientific training warred with the evidence before his eyes, driving him to increasingly desperate attempts to find rational explanations for Jake's abilities. He demanded that Jake submit to medical examination, accused him of using unknown chemicals or hypnotic techniques, and eventually began spreading his own theories about mass hysteria and the power of suggestion. Caught between religious condemnation and scientific skepticism, Jake found his simple desire to help others had transformed his life into a battlefield of competing ideologies. The crystal device continued to pulse with growing intensity, and Jake began to receive what he could only describe as communications from Seeker of Light and other alien beings. These messages weren't words but impressions and emotions that conveyed both encouragement and warning. His cosmic friends were pleased with his compassionate use of their gift, but they also sensed the growing conflict surrounding his actions. They communicated that humanity might not yet be ready for the level of advancement Jake represented, and that his presence was creating dangerous divisions that could ultimately harm both species. As winter approached, Jake Morrison found himself standing at a crossroads that would determine not just his own fate, but potentially the future relationship between Earth and the vast community of intelligent life awaiting contact among the stars. The choice Seeker of Light had offered him months earlier was becoming impossible to delay, and the consequences of whatever decision he made would ripple far beyond his small corner of the Arizona territory. The crisis came to a head on a bitter December evening when a group of armed men, led by Reverend Thompson and supported by several prominent townspeople, rode out to the Morrison Ranch with torches and grim determination. They had convinced themselves that Jake was a threat to the spiritual and social order of their community, and they intended to put an end to his unholy activities by whatever means necessary. Jake sensed their approach long before they appeared on the horizon, his enhanced abilities alerting him to their hostile intentions and the weapons they carried. The crystal device in his pocket pulsed with urgent energy, and for the first time since receiving it, Jake felt genuinely afraid not for himself, but for what might happen if the confrontation escalated beyond control. Mary Morrison stood beside her brother on the ranch house porch, her young face pale but resolute. She had become Jake's strongest supporter and fiercest protector, having witnessed firsthand the gentle compassion that guided his use of the alien gift. "They're scared, Jake," she said quietly, "scared of something they don't understand. But we can't let fear win." As the mob approached, Jake made a decision that would echo through history. Rather than flee or hide, he walked out to meet them, the crystal device glowing softly in his palm. The light it emitted seemed to calm the agitated horses and cause some of the men to lower their weapons involuntarily, but Reverend Thompson pressed forward with fanatical determination. "Jake Morrison," Thompson called out, his voice carrying across the desert air, "by the authority of the Lord and the good people of this territory, we demand that you renounce whatever devil's bargain has given you these unnatural powers. Destroy whatever talisman or charm you use, ask forgiveness for your sins, and return to the righteous path." Jake's response surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of defending his actions or trying to explain about Seeker of Light, he simply said, "I understand your fear, Reverend. I've been afraid too. Afraid of what I've become. Afraid of the responsibility I've been given. Afraid of making the wrong choice. But I've learned that fear makes us smaller, while compassion makes us larger than we ever imagined possible." With that, Jake raised the crystal device above his head, and it blazed with brilliant light that illuminated the entire landscape. But instead of the harsh, blinding radiance the mob expected from what they believed was a demonic artifact, the light was warm and gentle, filling each person present with a profound sense of peace and interconnectedness. In that moment, everyone present experienced what Jake had been feeling since his encounter with the alien visitor, direct awareness of the vast community of consciousness that permeated the universe, that understanding that all living beings were part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful than any single world or species could comprehend alone. Reverend Thompson fell to his knees, tears streaming down his weathered face as he felt the presence of what he could only interpret as divine love flowing through the alien technology. Dr. Whitmore, who had joined the mob in hopes of finally exposing Jake as a fraud, found his scientific worldview expanding to accommodate truths that transcended the limitations of earthly knowledge. But the most profound effect was on the children present, including Thompson's own young son. They looked up at Jake with eyes filled with wonder and recognition, seeing him not as a threat but as a herald of humanity's next great evolutionary step. In their innocent acceptance, Jake glimpsed the future Seeker of Light had shown him, a time when contact between species would be natural and beneficial, rather than fearful and divisive. As the light from the crystal device gradually faded, Jake felt a presence he had not experienced since that night in the desert. Seeker of Light was near, not physically, but through the quantum connections that linked all consciousness across the galaxy. The alien being communicated a mixture of pride and concern, acknowledging Jake's wisdom in choosing revelation over concealment, but warning of the consequences that such exposure might bring. The crowd dispersed slowly, each person processing their experience in their own way. Some would spend the rest of their lives trying to forget what they had felt, while others would be forever changed by their glimpse of cosmic truth. But for Jake Morrison, the cowboy who had helped an alien repair his ship, the real journey was just beginning. Standing alone under the star-filled sky, Jake felt the crystal device pulse one final time before going dormant. Seeker of Light's message was clear. Jake had proven himself worthy of the trust placed in him, but now he faced the ultimate choice. He could remain on Earth as humanity's secret guardian, slowly preparing his species for eventual contact, or he could accept the invitation to journey to the stars and serve as Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community. The decision would reshape not just his own destiny, but the future of human civilization itself. As Jake Morrison looked up at the countless stars twinkling in the desert sky, he realized that his simple act of kindness to a stranded traveler had set in motion events that would determine whether humanity would join the cosmic community as equals or remain isolated, in their small corner of the universe, forever wondering if they were alone. 3 months after the confrontation at his ranch, Jake Morrison made his choice. The crystal device had remained dormant since that transformative night, but Jake could feel its potential humming beneath the surface, waiting for his final decision. He had spent those months traveling throughout the territory, quietly using his healing abilities to help those in need, while carefully observing how different communities reacted to demonstrations of advanced capability. What he discovered both inspired and saddened him. Children and young people consistently responded with wonder and acceptance, seeing his gifts as natural extensions of human potential rather than supernatural anomalies. Adults, however, were divided between those who embraced the possibility of expanded human consciousness and those who retreated into fear-based rejection of anything that challenged their established worldview. The pattern convinced Jake that humanity wasn't quite ready for full disclosure of alien contact, but that the seeds of readiness were already present in the younger generation. His role wouldn't be to force rapid change, but to nurture humanity's gradual evolution toward cosmic awareness over the course of decades or even centuries. On a warm spring morning, Jake rode thunder to the same spot where he had first encountered Seeker of Light. The desert had returned to its natural state, showing no signs of the miraculous events that had occurred there, but Jake could still feel the residual energy that lingered in the quantum fabric of space-time around that location. Dismounting, Jake held the crystal device and opened his consciousness to the vast network of intelligence that connected all aware beings throughout the galaxy. Immediately, he felt the presence of Seeker of Light and dozens of other entities from various worlds and dimensions, all waiting to welcome humanity's first ambassador to their community of peaceful exploration and mutual growth. But instead of accepting their invitation to join them among the stars, Jake surprised his cosmic friends with a different proposal. He would remain on Earth, serving as a hidden guardian and guide, slowly introducing advanced concepts and abilities to carefully selected individuals who could help prepare humanity for eventual open contact. He would establish a secret network of enhanced humans who would work behind the scenes to solve global problems, heal ancient divisions, and elevate human consciousness gradually and safely. Seeker of Light's response carried both admiration and concern. Such a path would be lonely and challenging, requiring Jake to live multiple lifetimes as humanity's hidden protector, aging more slowly than normal humans due to his enhanced physiology, watching civilizations rise and fall while maintaining his cosmic perspective and responsibilities. Jake accepted these challenges willingly, understanding that his decision represented not just personal sacrifice, but a commitment to shepherding his entire species toward a future of peaceful coexistence with alien civilizations. The crystal device would serve as his connection to the galactic community, providing wisdom and guidance while allowing him to access advanced knowledge as humanity became ready to receive it. Over the following decades, Jake Morrison became a figure of legend in the American West, appearing at crucial moments in history to provide healing, wisdom, and guidance to those who would shape the nation's future. He worked behind the scenes during the Civil War, helping to heal wounds both physical and spiritual that threatened to permanently divide the country. He provided inspiration to inventors and scientists whose discoveries would advance human technology in directions that would eventually make contact with alien civilizations less jarring and more natural. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, Jake established a network of individuals who carried enhanced abilities similar to his own, though none possessed the full cosmic awareness that his direct contact with Seeker of Light had provided. These hidden guardians worked in various fields: medicine, science, diplomacy, and the arts, subtly influencing human development toward greater compassion, wisdom, and readiness for cosmic citizenship. Jake's aging had indeed slowed dramatically, and by the 1960s, he appeared to be a man in his 40s, despite having lived for over a century. He witnessed humanity's first tentative steps into space with pride and anticipation, knowing that each rocket launch and satellite deployment brought his species closer to the moment when open contact would become not just possible, but inevitable. The crystal device continued to evolve along with Jake's understanding, eventually becoming integrated into his consciousness in ways that made him a living bridge between human and alien awareness. He could sense the approach of other extraterrestrial visitors, preventing potentially disastrous first contacts while ensuring that beneficial encounters proceeded smoothly. As the story concludes in the present day, Jake Morrison continues his lonely but vital mission, now operating through a global network of enhanced individuals who work tirelessly to solve humanity's greatest challenges while preparing for the day when Seeker of Light and countless other benevolent beings can reveal themselves openly to a mature and ready human civilization. The cowboy who once helped an alien repair his ship had indeed seen his destiny change forever, but in ways that served not just his own growth, but the evolutionary advancement of his entire species. His simple act of compassion in the Arizona desert had created ripples that would continue spreading across both time and space, ultimately determining whether humanity would join the galactic community as wise and peaceful contributors or remain isolated, until they learned the lessons that Jake Morrison had been patiently teaching them for over a century. In the end, Jake's greatest discovery was that true cosmic consciousness wasn't about gaining power or knowledge, but about learning to serve something greater than oneself with unwavering dedication and love, a lesson that would serve humanity well when they finally took their place among the stars.